Well, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Poland's main opposition remains divided after Crime's leadership talks failed to resolve a growing internal dispute within Law and Justice, the party that dominated Polish politics and governed the country from 2015 to 2023. Meanwhile, Deputy Defense Minister Magdalena Sobkowiak-Czarnecka is in Washington for talks on defense cooperation, including a Polish proposal for joint Patriot missile production with the United States and Ukraine. Joining us now is Professor Wawrzyniec Konarski, Rector and Professor at Vistula University. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation, of course, and let's have a good morning.
Agreed. It might be a difficult morning if we're looking at the main opposition party, Law and Justice. Now, there was a final sort of ultimatum that time past midnight on Friday. So tell us a little bit about what this spat was about and what kind of options now that opposition party has. Will there be expulsions? Will there be compromises? What's next?
Let's begin perhaps with the nature of the Law and Justice Party, which is a sort of the classic leader or strong leader-centered party. Sometimes this type of the leader is called as a chief. And the word chief has been, by the way, used in some of the even well-developed Western democracies. Let me quote just this special term, which has been used in the connection to Eamon de Valera, former Irish Prime Minister and afterwards President. So the term chief sometimes is used as sort of the nomenclature or terminology, but sometimes it may reflect and confirm the real nature of the party. Law and Justice is such a party since its beginning, because it has been a sort of the personal project of Jarosław Kaczyński. And this is the main reason that this party is absolutely unable, the leadership of the party, which is strongly affiliated to Kaczyński, that they are not, and Kaczyński himself, unable, of course, they're not able, of course, to accept any type of fractions within the party. But the problem lies in the fact that if the party, which works, which is active within the democratic system, may have some fractions, it should not go against the nature of the party, because all of the parties in democratic system should be also democratic. If we may notice that in certain circumstances, such party is going to turn its nature towards the more strong leader, and it is called, of course, a strong leadership party, then the problem may come if the leader is going to be a bit weakened. And Mr. Kaczyński is not as fresh, as dominant figure in this party as he used to be in the beginning, and even in last, let's say, 8 or 10 years, namely in the times when Law and Justice used to be the governing party for the second time in the life of this party. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the problem with the succession remains open nowadays, and there are some people within the party, some of them are, let's say, ready to demonstrate a certain need for the change, and this is Mr. Morawiecki, former Prime Minister, and some of them, of course, want to be hidden. But definitely, there are very many speculations within this party who may replace Mr. Kaczyński. Of course, Mr. Kaczyński is absolutely uninterested in having this type of the debate, and therefore, as a strong leader, he is unable, strong leader nominally, of course, he is unable to accept any types of the fraction-like activities. And the problem is, because of that, very growing and rising as a problem for this party.
I mean, I want to come back to what you've said about strong leadership, chiefs. We mentioned Mr. Kaczyński, who's dominated the party, the Law and Justice Party, for a very long time. But you also mentioned Mr. Morawiecki, himself former Prime Minister, with this whole idea, and this happened some time ago, and I think this the dispute about this Development Plus. This wasn't a party, it was an association. So with that, and also if you're looking at some of the polling, even right now, I think some of the recent stuff from Opinia 24. Part of that puts, if this were a party, if this Development Plus were a party, they would go above the parliamentary threshold, I think over 6.2%. So I'm just, in a very direct way, Mr. Morawiecki, is he really about renewing the party? Is this a challenge to leadership? And ultimately, what will happen today? At 12, there's an announcement by Mr. Kaczyński. What are you expecting him to say?
You mean Mr. Morawiecki?
Correct. I mean, at 12, we'll have an announcement from these gentlemen, but Mr. Kaczyński will be also obviously there and present speaking.
Of course, Mr. Kaczyński doesn't have any other choice than to criticize any such actions, which is something absolutely typical for him, because he did not accept in any time of his leadership in his party, and also in his lifetime, any real opposition against his ideas. He is a strong leader, in fact. But Mr. Morawiecki is a person who was prime minister, who has got some really interesting for him type of the experience, how to rule the country, of course. He is a controversial figure. There are very many persons who were very critical, not only outside Law and Justice, but also inside Law and Justice towards him, like former Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Ziobro. But Morawiecki is definitely absolutely very ambitious person, and he may not accept the fact that he has been omitted in the selection of the persons who might be nominated for the position of the Prime Minister in spe. Someone who is applying, who wants to be a dominant figure, but he is not as the representative of the future possible government formed by the Law and Justice Party. But the problem lies in the fact that Mr. Morawiecki is not a person who is perceived by Mr. Kaczyński as someone who may succeed him and someone who may be the new face for the party. Therefore, Kaczyński selected Mr. Czarnek, who is definitely a person absolutely unable in my perception to reorganize the image, the sort of the profile of the party towards those persons, those possible voters who left Law and Justice and went to both confederations. Therefore, Morawiecki, who is still very ambitious, who is having some of his own ideas, conservative, but definitely light conservative, comparing to the former position of his own party, and who is evidently unsatisfied with the fact that he has been omitted in the playing much more important role in his party, he decided to arrange a sort of the mutiny. In fact, as I said before, nominally fraction is not an anathema in the Democratic Party, but this is anathema in the party led by strong leader.
Yeah, but also I think worth including a lot of names people need to familiarize themselves. You mentioned Mr. Czarnek, that's the chosen candidate for Law and Justice by Mr. Kaczyński, and this is something Kaczyński has always done. Pick the person that he wants to lead, but the real power remains with him. So rather than a successor here, I mean, this really is potentially one of those battles. I just want to ask you as well, I mean, you mentioned this Development Plus association. Now, if it were to become a party, you kind of alluded to it, the sort of lighter conservatism. What can we expect in terms of policy if this would become a party? Let's put it that way, speculating. What kind of policies could we expect? It would be very different from what Law and Justice has done. Where would we be headed? I mean, Morawiecki now ahead of the ECR, the European Conservative and Reformists. So what do we expect from that?
That's a very good question, but of course, a question which requires from you sort of the prophecy. I think that Mr. Morawiecki is absolutely aware that if he is able, if he decides to leave the party, of course, he is at the moment not ready to say such words, but that's why, being encouraged by you, I'm also having my own speculations. But if he leaves the party, then he definitely had to be forced to look for some possible alliance. I think we are having in the current coalition some groups which are more or less a bit similar to this type of the light conservatism, like the Centre Party, for instance. like the especially Polish Peasant Party, which is currently very badly perceived by the potential voters. So Morawiecki might be also sort of the offer for the Peasant Party and for the Central Party. And this type of the light conservatives will be definitely much different from the position adopted before by Kaczyński and his acolytes. But simultaneously, Morawiecki is not a person who is, in my mind, ready to start any type of the cooperation with the confederations. So the final type of the recapitulation of this part of my talk to you is that Morawiecki is also a sort of the offer, in my mind, for Prime Minister Tusk, because Tusk knows that his party is still the leader in the polls, but this position of being the leader of the polls does not mean that the current dominant party in the current coalition will be able to form the government.
Right. But on the government, I just want to ask you, because you mentioned Prime Minister Tusk there, and I think one of the things that the government right now is very much keen on, and an issue that whoever's in power has to contend with, is defense and security policy. Now, we have the Undersecretary of Defense, Ms. Sobkowiak-Czarnecka, in the United States, in Washington. She's just said that she's proposed a trilateral cooperation. This is about Patriot manufacturing, Patriot batteries in Poland, trilateral between the United States, Ukraine, and Poland. What do you make of that kind of proposal? What do you make of her efforts in Washington?
First of all, we are having quite long-lasting tradition in this type of the industry, which has been initiated already before the Second World War. And Poland used to have also the same tradition kept quite strongly during the times after the end of the Second World War and during the state with the predominant position of the Communist Party. So nowadays, Poland wants to play a real important role as the stable ally for the United States, despite the fact who is going, of course, to be the president of the United States of America. Now this position is kept by Mr. Trump, but of course, this type of the activities which Poland is initiating in order to attract Americans to be with us in the process of the production of this type of the arms seems to be a sort of the strategic initiative, and also strategic because this is already well illustrated by this Polish tradition and experience in this area. But this type of activities right now demonstrated by this minister is also very important for the image and profile of this government, which is having a lot of the problems with the approval taken from the public opinion. So the approximate success of Mrs. Sobkowiak-Czarnecka might be a very important step in the changing this bad image of the government as too much clumsy and too much inefficient.
All right. So, I mean, but this also goes with the news we already have that there will be a servicing and maintenance hub of Patriot missiles and batteries in Poland. So we'll see if this does go into also production. But look, thanks for that. We'll close it there. I was our guest here this morning, Professor Wawrzyniec Konarski. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but do stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.